Good afternoon. A warm welcome to our jam-packed and valuable webinar for our participants this afternoon. My name is Michael Savage. I'm a coach and trainer here at Robbins Research, and it's my pleasure to be your host today. As with any experience here at Robbins, we know that to get the most out of the content, you'll choose to be in a peak state. Be sure to hydrate, sit up straight and ready to learn, and actively participate. How can you do that? Well, one, take notes. And send in your questions in the box on the right and be ready for a Q&A promptly following the presentation. Strategic innovation. It's something that Tony speaks about in the 7 steps of business mastery, the 7 forces that can really transform your business. Why is it important in today's economy? Well, we know that to innovate means to stay ahead of the competition. In a highly competitive market, you need the best. And today, we're bringing you the best. Straight from the stage at Business Mastery, we have Scott Klososky. Scott is the author of 3 books that specialize in using innovation and technology to radically transform your business. His latest, The Velocity Manifesto. He's also a serial entrepreneur. He's worked with companies like Cisco, eBay, IBM, Cox Cable, Curves, Volvo, and Chick-fil-A, just to name a few. And his specialty today is going to speak to you about how you can strategically innovate and have constant strategic innovation in your products, services, and delivery in business. He has a lot of street credibility, and he likes to play in what's called blue oceans, which he'll tell you about later on this afternoon. So remember, following Scott, we'll have a Q&A, and you can easily submit those questions using the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen. We're recording. We'll absolutely make this available to you following today's session. So for all of us here at Robbins Research, let's participate fully. Let's sit up in our chairs in a peak state ready to learn, and welcome to our Mastery webinar, Mr. Scott Klososky.
Hey, thank you, Mike. This is a subject that I particularly love to visit about. So, some of you might have heard me talking from stage about social technologies. But today, as Mike said, we're going to be talking about constant strategic innovation. And let's identify those 3 words, right? It's not just being innovative or creative. It's being a constant strategic innovation. In other words, in order to be successful in business, you can never just go to sleep and say, well, because we're making money, we must be okay. And you have to, today, especially in today's day and age, with things moving as fast as they're moving, we have to constantly be on the lookout for how to do something that might be new and unique to be able to serve our customers or our clients or to improve profitability. And then I like the word strategic, because it's not just constant innovation where we're going to change every 6 months just to change because we got bored. It's that we're going to change when there's a strategic reason to do something that is innovative. So I love the wording to this. Now, because I'm a technology guy, I'll be putting a technology slant on innovation. But because I'm a businessman that has been starting, small businesses and growing them large for the last 20 years, I'm going to talk to you also, from the business frame of mind. But as I said, a topic that I'm very passionate about, and I'll tell you part of the reason. If you look at the graphic here, you might remember that in my presentations, I try to be very metaphorical with the graphics, and so this is a good example. Here's a graphic, and hopefully most of you have caught on that this symbolizes dog eat dog, and the phrase dog eat dog means a highly competitive market, right? That's what dog eat dog means. And so we all get to work in an economy right now that is highly competitive. And I would venture to guess that there's almost nobody out there today, who's listening or on this webinar that isn't working in something that has, some pretty good competition. The reason we've got more competition these days is, of course, not only is the economy maturing where there's, you're rarely ever the only one doing something. Now we have international pressures, and so, the fact is, it's highly competitive out there today. So trying to differentiate yourself from somebody else, I don't care whether you own a flower shop or a restaurant, or you're in some kind of service business, trying to differentiate yourself is not that easy. add to that this concept, this quote from Eric Hoffer, when people are free to do as they please, they usually imitate each other. So let's start there with innovation. Being innovative or being creative is something that, you see on all kinds of people's mission statements, and, almost every business seems to want to throw that word innovation into what one of their core beliefs is. But the reality is that's just not true. 90% of the people who say that innovation is core to them aren't innovative. There's just about 10% of the people who actually have new and fresh thoughts and then actually have the courage to take the risks to get those things to the market. Because being innovative without getting things to the market is kind of a waste. But I will tell you, my observation from a lot of the organizations I work with is people don't innovate as much as they aggregate. And so in other words, they look sideways at what their competition's doing or what other people are doing, and they just aggregate those ideas in. In other words, they're not really innovating. They're just aggregating. They're just gathering up ideas from others. And I really want you to be able to discern the difference from that. That's why I like this quote. We can't be this way, right? We can't, with all the choices in the world, and especially, I'm going to talk about the fantastic toolbox that we have with technology. Why would we sit there with that fantastic toolbox, in a lot of cases, tools that are completely free? Why would we sit there with those tools and then just kind of copy what other people are doing? It just doesn't make any sense. So I just want to make a comment about leadership. Just about everybody on this phone call, you are the leader of your organization. That's why you're involved with Tony Robbins, is that you are probably the leader in the organization, and so you are looking to be inspired. You're looking to add more knowledge so that you can lead more fully. Now, I think we have to recognize that the word leadership and innovation are, as I say here, inextricably bound. In other words, the very job of a leader is to be able to think about things in a different way than maybe the herd is thinking about it, and then to be able to get those ideas into practice. And I'll tell you, the first battle that I think we always have is in our own mind. And so what I find with leaders are, a lot of leaders, they work really hard to get something to be successful, but once it becomes successful, when whatever that means to them, whether that's profitable or a certain size, they almost create a glass ceiling for themselves. In other words, I've done it one way, and it's successful, and then it becomes really more and more difficult for them to ever be innovative because they've done it one way. Or if they see other people do it a successful way. So let's say somebody sees a Chinese restaurant open, and they look at 5 different Chinese restaurants, and they all do pretty much the same thing and pretty much have the same menu. A lot of people then think, well, gee, that's the way you do a Chinese restaurant. And it's really hard for them to think about doing it in any other way. We're going to talk a little bit, a little bit later about the concept of blue ocean that Mike mentioned. So a great book, if you've never read it, Blue Ocean Strategy. And it talks about the difference between a blue ocean, which is where there's no competition, or a bloody red ocean, right, where there's a lot of competition. So blue ocean strategy, of course, is a strategy where you're innovating something, and so you're in a market that doesn't have a lot of barriers and where there's a lot of profitability because there's nobody else doing it. Okay, even though we know that there's concepts like a blue ocean strategy, it's amazing how many people will choose to play in a bloody red ocean. And again, I look at it as a failure of leadership. So I think that's one of the things we have to recognize is if you are a leader, which you are, it is your somewhat unique responsibility to be innovative. All right, so for me, as you know, I'm a technology guy. So I'll tune this a little bit towards technology. I think technology gives us a fantastic palette or a fantastic toolbox in order to be innovative. Steve Jobs, of course, just passed, but the thing that's always interesting to me, I think about what's happened with technology over the last 20 years. 20 years ago, if you asked, well, who was in charge of Chrysler? Everybody would say, oh, it was Lee Iacocca, right? Everybody knew who was in charge of the big auto companies, or maybe who was even in charge of sometimes the big oil or energy companies. But today, most people have no idea who those people are, but everybody could tell you who runs Facebook, or who ran Apple, right? Or who runs Oracle, right? So now we all know those names. And that's just indicative of the fact that technology has come to play such an important role in our lives. So for me, there's lots of ways you can be innovative. You can be innovative in, what kind of customer service you provide. You can be innovative, with the products that you develop. But one powerful way to be innovative is just how you apply technology, especially because we're starting to live in a day and age now where a lot of that technology is free. And so especially you hear me talk about social technologies, and there's no better way to be innovative or better facilitator of being innovative than a bunch of free tools, because there's no price barrier for you to learn to be innovative with those. So, for example, being innovative with doing a blog, or being innovative with how you would use Twitter, right? Or being innovative with how you use a concept like crowdsourcing. Right? Those tools, in a lot of cases, cost you nothing, right? So great tools to be able to be innovative. So when I look at, let's say the forces that are reshaping the economy, okay, I don't care what kind of business you're in, okay? It doesn't matter what kind of business you're in. The next things the dynamics I'm going to show you would have some impact on you. So, for instance, one of the things we know that's reshaping is we got technology-savvy consumers. Well, that means that we can be quite innovative with how we use technology, because we can't say anymore that there's a bunch of consumers that don't know how to use, let's say, smartphones, because the majority of people in the United States now use a smartphone. We can't say that we can't connect electronically with consumers, because the vast majority of people in the United States are connected electronically now. Online brand reputation. Okay? So the fact that we can build a reputation online, and in a lot of cases it costs us nothing, so that regardless of how young our company is or how small our company is, we can build a reputation that when somebody searches on a search term, they can find us, and we can tell our story. And it hasn't been that way until just recently. You go back 20 years ago, only companies that had multi-million-dollar budgets had an ability to go talk to millions of possible consumers. But today, any business person can build up their reputation online, literally free, but if not free, for a small amount of money. We've got new interesting tools that allow us to learn more about our customers, a field we call customer intelligence. And so again, it doesn't matter if you're if you're a small restaurant, or you're a small healthcare, you have a small health club, or you've got a small physical therapy operation. It doesn't matter. Everyone's got customers or clients or members, and today technology can give us the ability to learn a lot more information about those people, which can create a much better relationship with them. And so just to give you an example of things that you can do to be creative or innovative, it's always an interesting thing to me. If you think about this, when you go to gas stations or convenience stores, you might spend thousands of dollars at a convenience store over the course of a year, and they don't know who you are. It's a completely anonymous transaction. You can go to a fast food restaurant. You can go 50 times a year. You could spend $5,000 at Subway, and the next time you walk in the door, Subway has no idea who you are. And so when I talk about being creative with customer intelligence, there's really big organizations today who have no idea who their customers are and do nothing to try to build a better relationship with them, because they just assume that it's a cash business. So for a lot of you, you work in industries where if you would just learn 5, 6, 7 new things about your customers and then use those things to create a better relationship, that would be an innovative way to drive new revenues or to improve your customer loyalty. And this is something, again, where because people have just accepted that we have very little information on our customers, that's the way they continue to operate. Even though we live in a world now where we have all kinds of tools that will allow you to gather lots of information on your customers. Real-time business intelligence. The fact that technology now gives us the ability to really monitor in real time what's going on with our customers, or what's going on with our business, or what's going on with our transactions. And so, we no longer live in a world where you have to wait until, the accounting gets done at the end of the month to see how things went. Today in real time, you can monitor how your business is doing. So a lot of times innovation is around how can I get better visibility into what's going on with my business, and then use that information in ways that my competitors couldn't possibly use. I'll give you an example of this. I work with a client that owns or it's a franchisor for a bunch of hair salons. And so the hair salon business, you might have 5 stylists show up in the morning, and you open your doors, and you just hope that people come in that day. Because if they don't come in, you've got the cost of the building plus the 5 stylists sitting there. And so, one of the things that we did is we tried to now change that situation by creating electronic connections with our customers where we can either text them or touch them on Facebook or on Twitter. And once we have the electronic connection, what we can do is anytime that there's nobody in the hair salon, in other words, I got 5 stylists and nobody's come in for the haircut yet, and so I know I need to drive business, because I know in real time that hair salon number 200 doesn't have anybody in there, I can send out an immediate electronic message to the customers in that area who have not had a haircut in 4 weeks and say, hey, if you'll come in for a haircut in the next 4 hours, we'll give you a discount. And we'll immediately drive 20, 30, 40 people into the hair salon. Okay, so that's a combination of the 2 concepts I'm showing you above. Customer intelligence, right, understanding more about my customers and having a connection to them. And then real-time business intelligence of knowing, hey, I've got people and costs are ready to work, but I don't have any customers. And when I add those 2 things together, I can create a new method for smoothing out revenue. Of course, you hear me talking all the time about social technology, so I don't want to go into too much detail on that. But, again, huge toolbox to be able to use creatively. And then we got mobile device usage. So, of course, this is growing explosively. And, we're not talking about the fact that people have mobile phones. It's really a computer. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, most of us are carrying computers around that also act as a phone, but they're a computer. And so there's a lot of new things that businesses can do to create applications or to create mobile versions of their website that can change the way transactions are done, change the way information is delivered to customers in a way that, again, is a creative or innovative connection method. So again, this is just a short list of things that are reshaping how organizations can work. And it's all a matter of being able to have a creative or innovative eye and to be able to go test out new ways of using technologies like this in the market. By the way, when we talk about that, the word constant innovation, one of the things around technology that I love is that we're getting new technology all the time, which gives us an ability to constantly find new and creative uses. So, for example, once you create a mobile connection with your customers, there are going to be innovative things you can do for the next decade. Now that you have that mobile connection with your customers. Okay. All right. So, why do we need to have constant innovation? I just want to make the point about speed and about the velocity that the economy is moving at. One of the things that should make sense to all of you is that the faster the economy moves, the more you'll have to be innovative to be able to stay out front, right? To stay competitive or to stay relevant. And the reality is the economy is speeding up. And so if the economy speeds up, if product development speeds up, if new competitors speed up into the market, but your pace of innovation is slow or non-existent, what happens is you're in increasing amounts of danger that your business can be taken away from you. So if you have an old style or an old line business, if you don't innovate, right, the velocity of the economy will roll right over the top of you. And like we see practical applications of that all the time. So, for example, you have a restaurant, but you don't understand anything about Yelp. And so you have a lot of customers who come in, eat at your restaurant, and then do ratings on Yelp. And since you don't manage it, you end up with, let's say, half good and half bad comments on Yelp. And what you would see today is maybe 20% of your business has now fallen off. And you don't understand why you've lost 20% of your business. You just assume it's the economy. It has nothing to do with the economy. It has to do with the fact that now with the ratings that are on Yelp and more younger people using Yelp to decide what restaurant they're going to eat at, that's what's happening to you. And the speed at which applications like Yelp or Around Me or City Search have come onto the market, and the speed at which ratings are now changing how people pick their vendors or pick who they do business with has been incredible. Like, it's all happened in the last 3 or 4 years. So again, I just want you to understand another reason why you have to understand innovation, okay, is because if you don't, things are going to pass you right by. So this is just an example I wanted to show you. This is a graphic that just shows how fast at Amazon e-books, right, electronic books, passed physical paper books. If you look at this, we're talking in 3 years. So from 2008 to 2011, e-books went from non-existent, right, they weren't sold at Amazon, to they now sell more by volume than what paper books sell. When you see that kind of velocity out in the economy, that's why I tell you, if you don't have a program of constant innovation, you will just flat lose ground. Now, from a technology standpoint, I would say this, a lot of people say, well, gee, I got an iPhone, so I must be good with technology, right? Or, I got a laptop, I know how to use it. That doesn't mean that you're good with technology or good at being able to be innovative with it necessarily. What I want you to think in terms of is to think in terms of the fact that you need to learn to be a digital architect. So let's talk about architecting. If we do this analogy, if you were to architect a building, you get to be creative and innovative with how you design and lay out the building, with the materials that you use, with the size and shape of the building, with the color scheme, with how you use glass, with how what you do with environmental controls in the building, right? So when you're an architect, you have a huge amount of ability to be innovative. And so I just want you to think about this concept of that if you're a leader today, and again, I don't care whether it's a small startup business or you're a mid-sized or large business, everyone that is in a leader position needs to think of themselves as a bit of a digital architect and thinking about how do I reach into the technology toolbox and use these tools in an innovative way. So just to give you an example, okay, I'm going to go through, I think I'm going to go through 3 different areas of technology and talk to you about how they impact innovation or how you can be innovative, right? So cloud computing is one. So if we look at cloud computing, look at what it does, is you stop buying servers and racks and bandwidth, and you actually move that out to a cloud vendor. It does some interesting things. One is it lowers your costs of computing. And because it lowers the cost of computing, it allows you to be more creative because now you're not being hamstrung by the costs of having to buy servers or buy bandwidth or things like that. It also allows you to, instead of paying people in your technology world to keep the email up and running, instead of paying people to keep servers up and going, you're now in a situation where you can get technologists to do creative and innovative things. So I would tell you this. A lot of times I'll go in and look at the technology people that folks are working with, and they'll have 2 network admins and a security person and a couple of help desk and then 2 programmers, which means out of their whole department, it's really probably just the 2 programmers that have any ability to do anything that's innovative. So the neat thing about cloud computing is, as you move more towards it, you can focus the dollars you spend, on employees, let's say, on employees that can actually do creative things with technology. All right, and then the last thing is it provides an ability to have standardized software that never goes out of date. And so, you don't have to wrestle with these problems anymore of, you go on a certain version of something and then a year later there's a new version, the next year there's another new version. When you move over to the cloud, you're just renting computing power. And so it really gets rid of having to worry about what platforms you're on, or if those things get versions behind. Again, it just frees you up to focus your brain power as far as technology on how can we do things with technology that help us win out in the market. All right, so let's look at social technologies. Again, there's all kinds of things social technologies can do that can help you be innovative. I talk a lot about we have now frictionless communication. In other words, it costs you zero to talk to millions of people if you want to. So again, it doesn't matter what kind of business you're in. If you want to cast a net to find new revenue and to do new ways of prospecting, you now have free tools. I mean, blogging and podcasting and Twitter, right, Facebook, depending on what industries you're in, those channels can be used, and they are free. And again, they can allow you to talk to 2 billion other people in the world if you'd like to do that. So you have now frictionless communication. So knowing that you have that, how can you use that in a creative way to expand your revenue, right? Or the ability to harness the internet herd, what we talk about with crowd dynamics or crowdsourcing. I mean, you now have, 150 websites that facilitate some type of crowdsourcing. And so people that are highly creative now are finding all kinds of interesting ways to use the crowd. I often give examples, like today the Navy and the Air Force, in order to build battle plans, they create games that simulate the battle that they have to go fight, and they put those games out to the gaming community, and they watch who scores the highest on those games. And so, just a creative way to build battle plans that people wouldn't have ever thought of before. And, we've got crowdfunding now, so you got creative ways to raise money. So we have people that are going online and, raising money for their small businesses or raising money for new products using websites like Kickstarter. Right? So, all kinds of new crowd dynamics. There are even crowd sites that just help you with ideation. Right? How do you create new ideas using people in the crowd? And then, of course, the last thing, just an ability to publish content on a massive scale for free. And so we think about, what can a business do to really expand their reach or expand their branding? You've got great examples of companies like Blendtec that had a high-end blender that created a viral video sensation with their Will It Blend videos. Highly creative, right? Because it wasn't just that they, hey, will it blend, and they made a daiquiri. I mean, they would put in an iPhone in a blender. I mean, they put crazy things in a blender just to show that their blender was so rugged it could blend anything. Great example of an innovative use of being able to create content and publishing that, for free to millions of people. And so, again, just another thing social lets us do. And when I say content, you can publish videos, you can publish documents, you can publish pictures, you can publish PowerPoints. And so any of that media you can create that would present a new product or present your company or your brand, and be able to publish that out to millions of people, again, for free. So lots of innovative ways to use social. And then, finally, let's just look at this last example, mobile, which, most of you know, to me, I think of mobile technology as an outboard brain. That is the way it's used today. It's not a mobile phone, it's the computer. And normally the role it plays in our lives is it is an outboard brain. It augments what our brain does. Okay? And so if you look at it that way, it changes, the way you might innovate with customers who have it. So, now our customers have access to us or to our information anywhere, right, anytime. So 24/7. We have access to them. They have access to us. So knowing that that's now the case, what kind of innovative information delivery stream can we create? What kind of innovative alerts could we do to alert our customers or clients to things that might be useful to them? What kind of instant access can we give them to us, or instant access we can give them to information? I mean, now that we've got this mobile connection, I mean, there's a whole slew of innovative things, and we haven't even scratched the surface today, I promise you, of what organizations can do. So, if you just say, you ask a question like, what could a company like Walmart do with a Walmart application? And when I say we're not scratching the surface, I promise you, even a company as large as Walmart right now, who really is pretty good at technology, has not even begun to think about how can they create a mobile application or a mobile version of their website that is something that their customers would all use. Location-based marketing. In other words, how do I, if I have a location, if I have a retail outlet, for example, if I have a location, what kind of marketing can I do when people are in that location or near that location? And that's all about location-based marketing. Again, there are innovative things out there in the world like Foursquare now, but I guarantee you we haven't even begun to figure out how we can do marketing now that some people carry a device that is location aware. And then the last thing is just being able to speed up the pace of transaction. I love the example of how the Apple stores have, now have people walking around in the store with an iPhone that has, what's called the Square on it, so that people can just do a transaction from anywhere in the store. So you don't have to go get in line to buy something at the Apple store anymore. Anybody who's walking around that store can run your credit card and basically scan the box of whatever you want to buy, run your credit card, and then you're done. You can walk out the door. So they've completely innovative how they check people out, right, or how people complete a transaction, even down to stupid things like they don't hand you a receipt. They ask if you want the receipt emailed to you, and they just email a receipt to you. And so there's lots of things we can do with the mobile device now to speed up how fast the transaction goes. Now, if you're having trouble visualizing this, let me give you some examples. I told you before, when you walk into a fast food restaurant, they don't even know who you are. You could have been buying Wendy's hamburgers for 40 years, and you're going to go in there tomorrow, and Wendy's still doesn't know who you are. But the way it could work is because you carry a mobile device, because that mobile device knows who you are. You could, when you get to the counter, you could bump your mobile device with one of their mobile devices on the counter or with any kiosk they have set up on the counter. And by bumping your phone to theirs, it recognizes that you're in the location, sends the information on the transaction over to your phone if you want, or at least it acknowledges that you've checked into the location. Now they know who you are. You think about all the things they could do now to build a relationship with you. So, again, have not even scratched the surface of how organizations are going to be able to use mobile devices to build tighter customer relationships. So again, huge toolbox, right? And you would think that innovation would be easy. If I had 3 hours with you today, I could sit here and give you example after example from different industries of things people could do with technology that makes a lot of sense, but that they don't do. Okay, I can't even stop myself from giving you examples. So let's say you were a bank. Okay, banks, they have all these computers. They spend millions and millions of dollars on computer systems. And let me give you one example of what a bank doesn't do with their technology that they could. So when you buy a car at a bank and you pay for it for 5 years and you pay it off, so you paid faithfully for 5 years, you paid them, let's say, $8,000 in interest. Now, they could with technology, because they know that you just paid this car off, they could automate sending you a letter in the mail that says, hey, thank you for buying this car, or send you an email, right, or a text message, right? Thank you for having paid off your car. We think it's great that you paid all the way through. You were always faithful with your payments. You've built up a lot of goodwill with us. So we sure would love to do another loan with you someday. Right? That's a simple thing that a bank could do with technology, is just to say thank you. They could automate that. They don't even have to have humans call you. And that would be something that could really improve your relationship with the bank. But yet, ask yourselves, how many times have you ever paid off a loan in a bank? Okay, I'm back.
All right, perfect.
Sorry, I have no idea why. But it just said I said I was talking too fast, and because I was talking too fast, they had to bounce me off so I'd slow down. I guess that was it. So, all right. So let me just go on with thinking about how to be innovative. Just wanted to make a couple of comments about that. I know I've been sitting here preaching, as fast as I can about, being innovative and why it's so important, and talking about, all the opportunities with technology. But a lot of people struggle with, well, how? I mean, how? And so one of the things I would tell you that I know has been something that's been very helpful to me. I mean, I have succeeded as a business person because I have the ability to look at things with a clean eye. In other words, I have an ability to look at how a transaction gets done, or how a customer relationship is built, or what products are on the market. And instead of being tainted by what I see and thinking, okay, well, that's the right way to do it or the only way to do it, I have an ability to look at things with a clean eye. And I think that's one of the biggest things you need to be innovative with. So again, I used an example for you before of, if you see 5 Chinese restaurants and they're all done exactly the same way, for some people it becomes increasingly difficult to try to figure out, well, how could I open a Chinese restaurant that would be different? Okay. Or, for example, I shared the example with you of banks. I mean, if you've worked at 3 banks and you see how 3 banks operate, you just assume that everything they do must be okay, and then you don't have a clean eye anymore for, well, what could you do? How could you do it differently? And so it's one of the biggest things I will tell you is whatever you are doing, I think one of the first things that you have to do is be able to go, lock yourself up in a room with a bunch of whiteboards and not think about how has everybody else done that thing. So let's say you're a coach, you're a life coach. Well, you've seen how 12 other life coaches operate. You've read books of life coaches. And the problem is every time you do that, it reinforces a picture in your mind of how coaching gets done. Having a clean eye is the ability and the willingness to erase that slate clean and to say, you know what, if I were to develop a coaching methodology the way I would like to, or one that's different than what everybody else does, one that's more effective, maybe one that's faster, whatever you want to try to achieve, how could I use methods that maybe nobody's using today? And I think this is one of the biggest inhibitors of us being innovative, is that our eyes are polluted, and they're polluted by what we've seen before. And so, if you really want to learn to be innovative, what you'll learn to do is have the skill of having a clean eye, of being able to rethink how something can be done without at all considering the way other people do it. The other thing that I will tell you can be a big help is to get the viewpoint from a lot of people from the outside of your particular industry. And so, in this graphic about follow the leader, there's always a thing about lemmings, right? A crowd of people go right off a cliff. The problem with, for instance, if you want to be a life coach, and so you just mimic somebody else that's a successful life coach, and that's all you do is just mimic them, okay, then, it kind of, this graphic applies. I like to sometimes assimilate good ideas from other people, but I don't ever mimic them. In other words, when I see other speakers, I might watch 10 other speakers. I never look at another speaker and say, well, I want to be like him or I want to be like her. I might say, I love the way she does X, and so I try to assimilate that into what I do. But what I would tell you is a good thing to do, which will help you sometimes with having a clean eye, is if you want to do some brainstorming, don't brainstorm with people that are from that industry. So again, if you let's say you're building a new cool kind of florist shop. It's okay, at some point to look and see what other successful florist shops have done. But in order to be innovative, sometimes you've got to step back and pull together 4 or 5 people that have nothing to do with that industry, and to say, okay, I want to do some things that are creative and innovative in this industry, and get some opinions from a technology guy, get some opinions from a nurse, get some opinions from a teacher, right? Get some opinions from a husband, and a wife, right? So get some opinions from people that are completely outside of that industry, and you'd be surprised how innovative at times people's viewpoints can be. Now, let's talk about the consequences if you're not. Okay, so I mean, if you're not innovative, and again, I want to go back to make that comment about a blue ocean. You know, we all have a choice, you know, whether we're going to play in a bloody, competitive red ocean, or whether we really are going to work hard to be innovative, constantly innovative, right? And so constantly trying to create a blue ocean that we can work in. If you don't, okay, if you don't go try to work in a blue ocean, so let's answer the, you know, let's say what the consequences are. So if you're slow to innovate with a new technology tool, what's the cost of that? Well, I can tell you, if your competitors are using the technology faster than you are, then they are grabbing market share until you catch up. I mean, that's certainly one of the consequences. What if you relentlessly compete in a red ocean? In other words, you know, you never do the work. You never force yourself to be innovative, or you never have the courage to actually try something unique that hasn't been tried before in your industry. If you relentlessly play in a red ocean, your profit margins will be thin because you'll be working in, you know, in a highly competitive area. You'll be competing with everyone else. You will always be in danger of losing market share. And you'll always be in danger in a lot of ways that your industry probably will get commoditized. And anytime something gets commoditized, the price starts dropping and the profitability starts dropping. And so to any extent that you can move towards a blue ocean, you can improve your profitability, and I would say you're going to improve your fun as well. Okay? Or what if you're somebody that innovates one and done? In other words, you know, again, Tony says constant strategic innovation, not just innovation. Okay? So constant means you have a policy of innovating strategically. Okay? But what if you didn't do it that way? What if you just locked yourself in a room, you came up with one great idea, and then you hung everything on that great idea? Okay? Well, I mean, the consequences of that, of course, are you're going to have a bubble. You're going to have a, you know, a profitable year or two, right? Things will go well for a while. But, you know, I always figure the best lead you'll ever get on the competition is a couple years, because everybody will see what you're doing. And if you got good ideas, people will copy your ideas. So, I mean, unless it's something you're going to patent and you're going to defend the patents, you're going to be in a situation where even if you come up with a great innovation, it'll give you 2 years. And then somebody else will be copying that innovation. All right, so one other thing I just want to hit real quick is when we talk about innovation, I don't want people to think about what I'm saying is you need to be bleeding edge, okay? Because there's a continuum where you might say there's bleeding edge all the way at one end of the extreme. In other words, we're spending a lot of money and taking a lot of risks. At the other end of that spectrum is lemmings, right? People who just copy everybody else around them and never stick their head up. Somewhere more, you know, in the middle of that continuum is leading edge, right? More over towards bleeding edge, right? But not bleeding, right? Leading edge. And that's what I want you to be. I want you to look for strategic, leading edge innovations. Okay, that's where you want to see, where you want to be. Even if maybe if you think about the concept of being a fast follower, if you were a fast follower of other industries, so don't wait around for people in your industry to do some new interesting dynamic, but if you see Starbucks doing it, or you see Nike doing it, or some of the more aggressive companies, maybe you bring that technique into your industry faster than anybody else does. That would be the place to be. So again, I'm not advocating being on the bleeding edge with innovations. You know, that you don't want to be there unless you're willing to take the risks, unless you have the resources to actually bleed. In other words, to take a lot of risks around things that might not work or pay out. All right, so here's a truism. People hear me, you know, if you hear me speak, you're going to hear me say this one all the time. I think that innovation has everything to do with you dictating the pace against your competition. So we all are competing with somebody, and we're all competing with a company or some other professionals, and we're all competing. Even me, right? I mean, I'm competing. There are other technology speakers in the world, other people that do what I do. So when meeting planners have to decide who they're going to hire, right, there's more than, you know, one person that does what I do. We all compete, right? So I have a philosophy that if you are innovative and you can get your innovations out onto the market better than your competitors, then you always are taking a lead on them. And in that lead, you actually can grab market share. So until your competitors catch up with your innovation, you grab market share, you grab customers away from them. If you are not innovative, then your competition is dictating the pace, and you will always have to copy them. And the problem is you will always be losing market share to them until you catch up. And so that's the price, I think, that's the bottom line on innovation, is if you do it, you can dictate the pace in your market, which means you can constantly be grabbing new customers and grabbing market share. If you don't do it, you will just give that up to your competitors. Okay? And so I just hope that you'd make the conscious decision to be out there in front of everyone else. Just, the last kind of quote, before I kind of end the talk, I always love this quote, God loved the birds and invented trees. Man loved the birds and invented cages. And what this quote means to me is that, God gave us a world with endless possibilities, endless possibilities. I mean, our ability to be creative and to innovate is so much bigger than what we probably believe it is. Unfortunately, man, us, we put the cages around ourselves. We're the ones that say, well, gee, it has to be done this way because that's the way it's always been done. Or, it has to be done this way because that's the way I've seen it done 100 times before. We're the ones that cage our thinking. And I think it's a shame, that we live in a world where we have unbelievable opportunities, especially, in a lot of the economies that most of us work in, unbelievable opportunities to prosper, and we cage our own thinking because we just don't have the ability to think with a clean eye. So I just wanted to end on that and just, say, I hope if you take nothing else away from this talk, that you take away the fact that innovation and the ability to be creative is completely in our control. That is not necessarily a God-given skill. That is just a decision that you make. Okay, hear me. It's a decision that you make to be innovative. It's not, a God-given gift. Anyone can be creative in their own way. Anyone can innovate a new business technique. Okay? It's just if you're willing to have a clean eye and think about how things can be done in a new and unique way, you can do it, and the rewards are great. All right, Mike, I left a little bit of time to answer some questions, and I would love to just see how I might be able to help people.
Absolutely. And remember, as the questions keep coming in, you can ask questions by entering them on the right-hand side of the screen in the chat box. First and foremost, Scott, just want to make sure that we can put this out there. Do you have any resources people can go to for more information on your stuff, your website, your books, just so we can mention that, because that's something that people are always looking for after we have a great speaker?
Sure. My website is just Klososky.com. It's my last name. And Klososky.com is kind of the hub that can get you to, some other resources, but, also websites on the books that I've written and things like that. So Klososky.com is the best place to go. And their blog, I write a blog that you can sign up for if you want to, keep up with some of the new ideas that I have around things. And so just Klososky.com is the best place to start.
Perfect. Looking at at small businesses, we have a ton of entrepreneurs who have been really brave and ventured out after maybe economic shifts caused them new opportunity. They ventured out and started their own business. What would you say are a few of the simple steps that a small business can take to stay in that creative space and innovate consistently?
I guess I would say two things. One is I think you have to dedicate the time to be innovative. You have to set the time aside. I love that Google, requires their employees to spend 20% of their time thinking creatively, right, or doing R&D, would be the way they might say it. I think what happens to small business people, and believe me, I've been there, is you get so busy operating the small business or getting it built or getting it to survive that we don't set aside the time to actually try to be creative, and I think that's dangerous. When you spend so much time doing and just trying to survive that you don't ever, pick your eyes up and look at, what are some new things I can do. So the first thing is I think you got to dedicate some time to going off, where you're not interrupted and where you're not distracted, to really be able to have the time and get your brain around thinking with a clean eye. I think that's one thing. I think the second thing is you have to have a willingness to take some risks. And I think sometimes, that can be a hard thing because small business owners or startups are already taking risks. And you're already taking a risk just playing the game. And so I think sometimes people feel like their risk meter is too high already. And I think that's a mistake because I think small businesses have more of an ability to be nimble and to actually pioneer creative things in some ways than big businesses do.
Mm. You mentioned as well that going outside of your industry to get thought, we think about Steve Jobs, who would look at the automobile industry for design of computers, going outside of your industry for new innovative ideas. How would you suggest that small businesses reach out to other industries to bring them into that space? And I guess I'll pre-frame this one. That there's an example. The auto industry does 20 groups where they'll get with 20 other dealerships in other areas around the country and come together and learn from each other. But you're talking about going outside of your industry. How would you suggest a small business go after a few different industries in order to create that space for themselves?
I think because, you don't have a bunch of money to go hire experts to come in from other industries, you rely on family and friends. So I think a small business just has to say, look, hey, on a Friday afternoon or a Saturday morning, I'm going to buy pizza for everybody, and I want to just, put some questions up on a board, and I just want you to do some green light thinking with me, right? And so a small business owner might put a question on the board. Okay, I'm in this business. How could I build a better customer relationship with my customers? And what could I do that's not being done today by my business to build a tighter customer relationship? Well, if you ask that to, 6 or 7 people who work in completely different industries, they'll all have different viewpoints. And so there might be some gold nugget. It's kind of funny. You mentioned the example of the car industry. So, when you talk about going outside your industry, Mike, are you familiar with Google building the driverless cars?
Yes.
Okay. Well, look, there's a good example, right? If you're in the car industry, you'd be insane not to have Google sitting at the table right now talking to you about what they're doing with driverless cars. Right. So anyway, but I think on a small scale, you got to rely on family and friends who are in different professions or different areas to come do that kind of green light thinking with you.
Nice. Great question coming in. Do you think small business owners' greatest breakthroughs can come by innovating around the customer-client experience more than the products and services themselves?
I think it's cheaper and faster to solve that, yes. And I think that's probably why I've mentioned it, having come up as an entrepreneur, having built companies on my own credit cards, I have sympathy, I have empathy, right, for what a small business or a startup goes through. And yes, I think it's easier and less expensive sometimes to innovate changing a customer relationship than it is to develop a whole new product. Because sometimes developing a whole new product involves a lot of R&D and then a lot of manufacturing and then a lot of, you got a lot of marketing to get the product into the marketing. Improving a customer relationship is often, inexpensive and has immediate returns on it.
Awesome. Now, next question. You mentioned being competitive, and for somebody like yourself or myself as a speaker or coach, when we're a single operator, a small business owner that maybe is a single operator, the question is, if you're creative, how do you implement innovative ideas while also maintaining operations to bring in funds?
Well, boy, I'm not sure, Mike, that there's a magic answer to that, other than what I mentioned before, which is I think you have to have the discipline of setting aside a certain amount of time to think creatively or to think outside the box. And I think it's very dangerous to be a short, what we call low beam thinker, right? If all you do is drive around with your low beams on and you never turn your high beams on, we drive mostly with our low beams on. the vast majority of the time. But every once in a while, I don't know what, 3% of the time, 5% of the time, you need those high beams. And I think it's the same, when you're a single operator like me. I mean, I might have to give up revenue to set aside the time to go think creatively, but I'm just setting aside short-term revenue to trade off for long-term opportunities. And if you don't have the heart and willingness to do that, as a single operator, then you'll just keep doing the same things over and over and over again, and you better hope that they work for you forever.
Absolutely. Last one, because I know that we got to be aware of the timing today. Is there a Technology for Dummies version of all of these tools and information so that it's made simple? So a couple recommendations of things that people could go grab to really begin to learn how to innovate creatively.
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I don't know that there's so much for dummies, but I would say I think the internet is a powerful resource of information. So I think going on and doing searches to learn about technologies is the easiest way to do things, and it's free. So for example, if you want to learn how to do crowdsourcing, going online and just doing a search on how to crowdsource, or crowdsourcing for writing, or crowdsourcing for a business plan, just going in and doing searches on things that you want to learn about. I mean, there's so much information on the internet, and a lot of it is good basic information today. And I think, I think there's no, again, there's no magic answer to that, but I think if you learn the skill of being able to search the internet well, that's something that will serve you all your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And to throw one back at you, the rivers of information concept, to take in relevant information, the thing that you were teaching at Business Mastery was absolutely phenomenal for a number of my clients that we work with here at Robbins, as well as my family's personal business. And it's a great way for people to keep up on something that they want to learn more about, to tailor that information stream. So people should absolutely check that out on your site as well. Scott, thank you so much for being with us today. We really, really appreciate your time and absolutely amazing information to really drive home, what Tony teaches about that constant, creative, strategic innovation. So we hope everybody enjoyed the webinar today and that they got the information that they need to absolutely master that piece about constantly innovating in their business. And we appreciate your time, and we look forward to speaking with you again and seeing you at Business Mastery.